Everyone knows the line. Is it better to be loved or feared? People repeat Machiavelli's answer like it's a style choice, like the prince was giving advice on how to seem dark, cold, impressive. It wasn't. Machiavelli was answering a harder question. When pressure arrives, when loyalty becomes expensive, when obedience starts costing people something real, what still holds? That is why this line is so dangerous when it is half understood. Get it wrong in one direction, and you spend your life begging to be loved by people who will not pay for you when the cost rises. Get it wrong in the other, and you perform cruelty, create hatred, and call the wreckage strength. So in this video, we're going to strip the quote down to its actual machinery, what Machiavelli meant in The Prince, why love fails first when sacrifice enters the room, why fear works only when it is disciplined by limits, why hatred is the line that destroys rulers, and why this logic applies far beyond princes, because every hierarchy eventually reaches the same test. Can it still command when affection no longer does the work for free? This is not a morality play about kindness versus brutality. It is a strategic question about obedience. Which bond survives instability? Which bond decays under cost? And what separates authority that lasts from authority that invites its own removal? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The quote everyone uses and the condition they omit. The most important part of Machiavelli's sentence is the part people usually remove. If one cannot be both, that is the condition. And once you put it back, the whole quote changes shape. Machiavelli is not asking what the ideal ruler would prefer in a perfect world. He is not comparing charm and menace as personality types. He is asking what is safer for a ruler when the luxury of having both is unavailable. Safer. That word is the key. Safety means preservation, retention of command, survival of rule under unstable human conditions. That already kills the childish reading. This is not etiquette, not branding, not a Gothic preference for darkness. In The Prince, Machiavelli is writing for rulers in dangerous terrain, where loyalty can move, coalitions can form, fortunes can reverse, and good feeling evaporates the moment a population is asked to endure something difficult. Most authority looks stronger than it is because most of life is not constant crisis. During easy periods, almost any ruler can seem admired, almost any boss can seem respected, almost any parent can seem influential, almost any founder can seem inspiring. Calm periods create false data. People comply when the system is feeding them, when standards are light, when exceptions are plentiful, when no one has to choose between loyalty and self-interest. Pressure is the real audit. That is the field Machiavelli writes on. Not peace, but strain, not speeches, but reversals. Not ideal humans, but ordinary humans, when appetite, fear, gain, fatigue, envy, and danger begin pulling against declared loyalty. So, the quote is not really about emotion in the sentimental sense. It is about which bond remains operative when sentiment weakens. That is why he frames the issue as a question of safety. He assumes what naive leaders try not to think about. The people praising you in comfort may not be the people sustaining you in hardship. The team applauding your generosity may become hostile the moment generosity tightens into discipline. The public that adores inclusion may recoil at the first necessary exclusion. The child who loves your warmth may test the first line that cannot be negotiated. Authority does not fail because it had no pleasant seasons. It fails because pleasant seasons were mistaken for proof. So, before you even get to Machiavelli's answer, the first correction is this. He is not telling you what feels better to possess. He is asking what still functions when conditions become expensive. And that means the quote belongs to the moment where attachment and interest separate. That is where real rule begins. Chapter 2. Why love is the weaker bond. Love sounds stronger because it sounds richer, more human, more elevated, more worthy of admiration. But Machiavelli is not judging beauty. He is judging reliability. And politically, love is weak because it is voluntary. That single fact does most of the work. A person decides they love a ruler, a leader, a boss, a parent, an institution, a public figure. They do not sign a contract with fixed obligations. They construct an internal story. This person is good to me. This person protects me. This person sees me. This person reflects my values. This person makes me feel safe, important, fortunate, or morally clean. That is a soft bond because the follower authors it inside his own mind. And what the follower authors, the follower can revise. This is the political weakness of affection. It is not enforced from the outside. It is curated from the inside, which means when reality changes, people edit the story. As long as benefits flow, love feels stable. While prosperity continues, gratitude is cheap. While the ruler is associated with gain, ease, pride, inclusion, or moral comfort, affection is easy to perform and easy to believe. But then the cost enters. The beloved ruler asks for patience. The admired boss enforces standards. The generous founder denies access. The fair parent says no and means it. The politician demands cuts, taxes, limits, restraint, mobilization, discipline. Now watch what happens. The emotional bond does not usually disappear in one dramatic moment. It is repriced, reinterpreted, reduced. People begin telling themselves a different story in order to free themselves from obligation. He is not generous anymore. He is rigid. She is not visionary anymore. She is unrealistic. They are not principled anymore. They are out of touch. You are not fair anymore. You are controlling. Notice what changed. Often, not the person, the price. This is why Machiavelli is so cold about gratitude. Gratitude feels noble in speech and weak in practice because people do not like carrying debt. A benefit received becomes psychologically uncomfortable over time. So they shrink it, they normalize it, they reinterpret it as something they deserved, or they decide whatever you gave in the past has now been canceled by what you demand in the present. That is how love dissolves under pressure without people having to call themselves traitors. They simply rewrite the ledger. You can see this everywhere once you stop using moral language and start using strategic language. An employee says they love their manager because the manager is supportive, flexible, humane. The environment is low friction. Deadlines bend. Mistakes are forgiven. Everyone feels trusted. Then the quarter turns bad. Hiring freezes. Standards rise. Excuses expire. Suddenly, the same team no longer experiences the leader as admirable. Why? Because what they loved was not authority. It was comfort attached to authority. In public life, the same thing happens at scale. A leader is adored while he spends freely, speaks warmly, distributes protection, and offloads costs into the future. Then, scarcity arrives, and he has to choose among losses. The public does not repay years of affection with sacrifice. They recalculate. They ask what this now costs them. Even in intimate authority, the pattern is brutal. A parent who is loved because the child feels heard and indulged may discover that affection means almost nothing the moment obedience collides with appetite. The test is not whether the child felt warmth yesterday. The test is what happens today when the answer is no. This is what Machiavelli means when he writes that men are ungrateful, fickle, simulators and deceivers, avoiders of danger, eager for gain. People hear that and flatten it into cynicism. But his point is narrower and more useful. Human beings are unstable when loyalty becomes costly. They do not remain fixed simply because they once felt attached. And this is exactly why approval-seeking rulers decay. They have to be continuously rechosen, continuously liked, continuously emotionally maintained. They become dependent on the atmosphere around them. They stop commanding and start courting. Every difficult demand threatens the bond they depend on, so they soften, delay, negotiate, explain too much, forgive too much, and call that humanity. But a leader who cannot survive displeasing people does not possess authority. He rents cooperation from mood, and moods default to self-interest under stress. That is why, In Machiavelli's accounting, love is the weaker bond, not because affection is fake, because affection is reversible. Chapter 3. Why fear creates reliability. Now, the part that gets distorted. When Machiavelli says fear is safer, he is not praising spectacle, not tantrums, not sadism, not theatrical danger. He is talking about a more precise instrument. Fear is the expectation of consequence. That is why it works. A person may stop loving you. They may resent you. They may privately despise you. But if they know exactly what happens when they cross a line, and if that consequence is real, many of them will still comply. This is the hard political advantage fear has over love. It does not require inward warmth. It only requires an outward calculation. If I do this, I lose that. If I betray, I am removed. If I sabotage, I pay. If I challenge openly, the system closes on me. That internal arithmetic is more stable than gratitude because loss is easier to understand than duty. Human beings are inconsistent in loyalty and much more disciplined in avoidance. They can rationalize breaking an emotional bond. They are far less relaxed about absorbing a known penalty. That is why fear survives mood shifts. It sits beneath preference. It operates even when admiration is gone. But this only works if fear is credible. That word matters. Credible fear is not panic in the room. It is not the ruler constantly reminding everyone that he is dangerous. In fact, rulers who need to advertise danger are often broadcasting weakness. They are trying to compensate for the fact that no one really believes the line will hold. Real fear is quieter than that. It rests on settled expectation. People know where the line is. They know the line is real. They know that if they cross it, charm will not erase the cost. That makes behavior predictable before a confrontation even begins. Most useful fear is preemptive. It shapes choices upstream. It keeps many conflicts from having to occur. This is why institutions with strong enforcement often appear calm. The order is doing the work in advance. A serious legal system, a disciplined military command, a competent executive, a founder with a clean reputation for acting once and not revisiting core breaches over and over, these structures do not need daily theatrics. People already know the consequences live behind the surface. Compare that with the fake strongman. He shouts, threatens, humiliates, dramatizes every challenge. But when a real line is crossed, the response is inconsistent, sometimes explosive, sometimes absent, sometimes dependent on who flatters him. That does not produce Machiavellian fear. It produces a game. People start learning how to manage his moods instead of respecting the structure. Once authority becomes a game, it is already leaking. So fear works when it detaches obedience from affection and anchors it to anticipated cost. A team may ignore a beloved manager if standards can always be renegotiated. That same team becomes reliable when deadlines matter, breaches are recorded, and failure carries visible consequence. A government is not obeyed because every citizen loves it. It is obeyed because law, force, exclusion, penalty, and administrative reality make defiance expensive. A family does not remain ordered because children feel permanently grateful. It remains ordered when lines are understood and consequences are not fictional. This is unpleasant to sentimental people because it exposes how much of social peace is maintained not by harmony, but by cost. Yet Machiavelli's realism is difficult to refute. If your authority works only while people feel good about you, then you have no authority at the exact moment authority is most needed. Fear, correctly understood, gives you a bond that survives emotional weather, but only if you stop at the line, and that line is where the serious reading begins. Chapter 4. The line Machiavelli draws. This is the part bad readers skip because it ruins both fantasies. It ruins the fantasy of the soft ruler, because love is not enough, and it ruins the fantasy of the brute, because fear is not unlimited. Machiavelli's real warning is that a ruler can survive being feared, but not being hated. That distinction is everything. Fear is still political. Hatred becomes insurgent. A feared ruler says, in effect, there are lines, and crossing them has costs. A hated ruler communicates something else. I can injure you arbitrarily, humiliate you personally, take what is yours, and keep wounding you beyond necessity. Once that message settles, obedience changes character. People may still submit outwardly, but inwardly, they stop orienting around the order and start orienting around your removal. That is when fear stops stabilizing rule and begins manufacturing enemies. Machiavelli is concrete about this. He warns rulers about touching property and women because he understands that certain injuries are not processed as ordinary penalties. They are processed as desecrations. In modern terms, the point is broader. Do not make your power feel intimate, invasive, and gratuitous. Do not turn public authority into private violation. People can live under hierarchy. They do it all the time. They can even live under severe systems if the rules feel legible. What they tolerate far less well is humiliation, arbitrariness, confiscation, and repeated insult. Those are the substances that convert fear into hatred. Why? Because they destroy predictability and dignity at the same time. Punishment alone does not always radicalize people. Many punishments are accepted as part of the order, but punishment that feels random, vindictive, or excessive changes the story. Now the subject no longer thinks, I crossed a line and paid for it. He thinks, I am exposed to a ruler who can reach into my life however he wants. At that point, compliance becomes survival behavior, not political acceptance. And survival behavior breeds hidden opposition. That hidden opposition is what kills rulers long before open rebellion does. Information stops flowing upward. Flattery replaces truth. People conceal mistakes until they become disasters. Subordinates obey in public and sabotage in private. Coalitions form not around ideology, but around shared injury. The ruler mistakes silence for strength, while the structure corrodes underneath him. This is why humiliation is so expensive. Public shame, arbitrary degradation, unnecessary destruction of status, these things create memories people organize around. A clean punishment may end a violation. A humiliating punishment often creates a long-term enemy. You can see this in every scale of hierarchy. A manager who enforces standards firmly but impersonally may be feared and respected. A manager who singles people out for pleasure, mocks them publicly, keeps moving the standards, and uses power to display ego, creates a workforce that lies, withholds, and waits for his failure. A parent who punishes clearly can maintain order. A parent who humiliates, invades, and punishes according to mood produces outward compliance and inward hostility. A state that punishes crime may preserve legitimacy. A state that confiscates selectively, applies law unevenly, and humiliates populations creates the very coalition that later calls itself justice. So the line is not kindness. Machiavelli is not telling rulers to be beloved humanitarians. The line is strategic restraint. Punishment must feel connected to order, not appetite. Severity must look necessary, not recreational. Force must close breaches, not advertise insecurity. Injury must be bounded, intelligible, and preferably completed, not dragged out into repeated personal violation. The ruler can make people fear consequences. He must not make them dream of revenge. That is the fatal boundary. Chapter 5. The architecture behind stable rule. Once you see that, the deeper logic comes into focus. Machiavelli is not really trying to produce fear as an emotion. He is trying to produce order as a system. Fear is one tool inside that system. That matters because weak readers stay at the level of feeling. They ask, should I seem warmer or harsher? Should I be liked or intimidating? But Machiavelli is operating at the level of structure. He wants a form of rule in which obedience is easier than resistance. Breaches are costly, and the ruler does not have to renegotiate his position every day. That takes architecture first. Boundaries must be clear. If people do not know what is protected, what is forbidden, what is negotiable, and what triggers punishment, they start experimenting. They test. They edge past limits. They run soft violations to gather information. Every unclear line invites another probe. Soon the ruler is not commanding a system. He is reacting to a laboratory of disrespect. Clear lines reduce testing because they reduce ambiguity. Second, consequences must be visible enough to educate. An unenforced standard is not compassion. It is instruction in where power stops. Once people see that core breaches go unanswered, they update their map of reality. They begin timing delay, hiding defiance, borrowing exceptions, and using precedent against you. One tolerated violation becomes a permission structure for 10 more. This is why recovery is so expensive for weak rulers. They delay enforcement to avoid friction, and then later have to use far more force to reclaim ground that should never have been ceded. Third, punishment must be selective. This is where power becomes efficient. Weak authorities threaten everyone all the time because they have no precision. Strong authorities identify the breaches that matter to the hierarchy itself. Betrayal, corruption, contagious indiscipline, open defiance, strategic sabotage, theft of authority. Those are punished clearly. Not every irritation deserves force. If you punish everything, you turn the whole environment into friction and begin spending legitimacy too fast. Fourth, rewards must support the order without replacing it. Machiavelli is not naive enough to think systems run only on fear. Stable rule also channels ambition. It lets compliant people keep dignity, advancement, protection, access, and predictable gain. That does not make the system soft. It makes it cheaper to maintain. If obedience offers no advantage and hierarchy feels like pure extraction, then every subject has reason to defect the moment a rival option appears. A durable order does not merely punish revolt. It gives enough protected benefit inside the order that revolt becomes an inferior bet. Fifth, consistency must harden into reputation. This is where command becomes efficient. At first, authority has to prove itself through action, but if action is coherent, people begin internalizing the map. They no longer need fresh demonstrations every week. The ruler's reputation starts doing the work before the ruler moves. People pre-comply. They self-correct. They avoid the line because they know the line is not decorative. That is real power, when the structure governs behavior in advance. The opposite is also true. A ruler without a stable reputation pays for everything at retail. Every conflict becomes fresh. Every boundary requires a performance. Every instruction invites interpretation. Every subordinate waits to see whether this time you mean it. That is not command. That is exhaustion. So, the architecture behind stable rule is not emotional intensity. It is legibility, credibility, selectivity, incentive, and reputation. That is Machiavelli's actual territory. He takes what sounds like an emotional dilemma and translates it into a system of control. The question is not which feeling sounds stronger. The question is which arrangement of consequences, protections, and limits keeps hierarchy intact when pressure hits. Stable rulers do not endlessly chase affection, and they do not constantly display violence. They make disobedience expensive before disobedience becomes widespread. Chapter 6. How modern people misapply the lesson. Now look at the two modern mistakes. The first mistake is sentimental weakness. This is the person who wants to be liked and mistakes that desire for moral superiority. They call it empathy, openness, collaboration, healthy culture, mutual respect, enlightened leadership. Sometimes, some of that is real, but often it is a more embarrassing thing, fear of imposing cost. This person cannot say no cleanly, cannot punish without over-explaining, cannot withdraw access without feeling guilty, cannot sustain standards when the room becomes uncomfortable. So they build an order around approval. They make everyone feel consulted, included, relaxed, emotionally safe, and because the environment is easy, they begin imagining they are respected. Then the bill arrives. A hard deadline, a firing, a denied request, a budget cut, a strategic pivot, a boundary that cannot be discussed into disappearance. That is when the truth appears. The people who love them often love the low-cost environment, not the authority at the center of it. The moment comfort stops, accusations begin. Trust becomes betrayal. Warmth becomes softness. Fairness becomes weakness. The approval-based leader suddenly discovers that he trained everyone to expect pleasure from the hierarchy, not obedience to it. So when sacrifice is finally demanded, he cannot collect it. That is the weak misreading of Machiavelli, trying to live on affection as if affection were stored power. It isn't. Then there is the opposite mistake, and it is just as stupid. The crude reader hears that fear is safer and turns it into an aesthetic, hard face, aggressive posture, public correction, random displays of force, constant reminders that he is not to be challenged. He believes domination must be visible to be real, but this person usually confuses intimidation with authority. He can make people nervous. He cannot make the system stable. Why not? Because his aggression is often personal, impulsive, and uneven. He lashes out where his ego is pricked and ignores breaches that flatter him. He humiliates unnecessarily. He overpunishes small acts and underpunishes strategic threats. He creates anxiety without clarity. That does not produce disciplined fear. It produces concealment. People around him become tactical. They stop speaking plainly. They route information sideways. They flatter upward and defect laterally. Small coalitions form to survive him. Official loyalty rises while real trust collapses. The bully reads the silence as control, not understanding that he has converted his environment into a field of hidden resistance. This happens in companies constantly. The founder who terrorizes meetings and calls it excellence eventually builds a room full of performers, not operators. Problems are hidden until they become catastrophic. Real talent exits. Mediocrities remain and become expert in theatrical submission. The structure looks obedient and is actually dying. It happens in politics too. The loud ruler often attracts flatterers and repels truth. He looks strongest precisely when the informational quality around him is worst. By the time revolt becomes visible, he has already been blind for a long time. So both misreadings fail for the same reason. The approval addict cannot impose necessary cost. The bully cannot control the cost he imposes. One dissolves authority by making it emotionally dependent. The other poisons authority by making it personally invasive. Neither produces the thing Machiavelli is after: stable obedience under pressure. That is why his answer feels colder than self-help and more disciplined than brutality. He is not giving you a personality ideal. He is giving you a survival rule for command. Chapter 7. Machiavelli's real answer in one sentence. So, what is Machiavelli's real answer? If one cannot be both loved and feared, it is safer to be feared than loved. But the strongest form of rule is not raw fear. It is authority built on credible consequences, bounded force, and a reputation for restraint. That is the full sentence, hidden inside the famous one. Love is weak because it is voluntary and reversible. Fear is stronger because it works through anticipated cost. But fear becomes self-destructive when it mutates into hatred through arbitrariness, humiliation, and violation. So the serious ruler does not rely on affection where consequences are required, and does not indulge cruelty where order would be enough. He makes the lines known. He makes enforcement real. He keeps injury bounded. He lets reputation do work that panic and pleading cannot do. That is as true now as it was in Machiavelli's world. A founder cannot build a company on being adored if hard calls will be needed later. A leader cannot preserve standards by asking everyone to feel good about them first. A government cannot maintain legitimacy through softness alone, but it also cannot survive making power feel predatory. A parent cannot govern on warmth alone, and cannot poison the house with humiliation either. The modern formula is simple. Never rely on affection where consequences are required. Recap. The question was never which feeling sounds morally prettier. It was which bond survives instability. Love fails first because it is voluntary, self-authored, and easily repriced once loyalty becomes expensive. Fear works better because it ties behavior to anticipated loss rather than gratitude. But fear collapses into hatred when punishment becomes arbitrary, humiliating, invasive, or personal. So stable rule rests on clear boundaries, incredible enforcement, selective punishment, bounded injury, and a reputation that teaches people to calculate before they test. That is the chain. Here is the final truth. Never build authority on feelings you cannot collect when the bill arrives. Subscribe and like if you want unsentimental analysis of power and human behavior. Approval does not protect command. Comment with the one place in modern life where people most confuse being liked with being in control.